The story opens in Ilmgard, a continent split among 5 kingdoms as someone steadily climbs a long staircase. A crowned young noble jolts awake in a grand chair pulled from a daze by a sudden shock. The narration reveals that every royal bloodline on the continent traces back to one man. That man is introduced as Evan Verlaine, a notorious noble heir gifted with mind reading, surrounded by women in a courtly scene thick with tension. The instant he hears the name Evan Verlaine, he repeats it in disbelief as the identity hits him. He finds himself on the palace floor, staring ahead in confusion as he tries to process the unfamiliar royal chamber around him. Still reeling, he mutters under his breath and wonders where he is. A furious blonde noblewoman suddenly declares that she is breaking off their engagement. She warns that this is only the beginning and tells him to brace himself for what comes next, while the hall falls deathly silent. Trying to steady himself, he questions what is happening and reasons that he had been at work only moments ago, wondering if an earthquake caused this. Staring at the blonde noblewoman, he panics over the talk of a broken engagement and cannot understand what she is saying as he desperately tries to figure out who she is. Around the hall, noblewomen whisper that the princess has finally made her decision and complain that even if men are rare, there is still a limit to how rude one can be. As he scans the lavish chamber, he is overwhelmed by the palace setting, the elegant dresses, and the crowd's chatter. And he starts wondering where he is. Looking down at himself, he blurts out in confusion over the strange clothes he is wearing. Staring at his hands, he is struck by the horrifying realization that this body might not be his. Facing the princess on the throne in the grand hall, he spirals deeper into confusion and desperately wonders what is happening and where he has ended up. The shock deepens when he realizes the situation feels exactly like one of those reincarnation stories. The princess coldly addresses him as Evan Verlaine and tells him that if he has something to say, she will hear it. Trying to stay respectful, he awkwardly apologizes and says she must have mistaken him for someone else. Narrowing her eyes, the princess presses him and demands to know who he claims to be instead. He nervously explains that he is Takayuki Shinohara, a librarian at the city library, and insists that until just a minute ago, that had been his life. His mind flashes back to the city library, where he had been quietly working among the shelves and children before everything changed. The memory sharpens around 32-year-old Takayuki Shinohara as he carries a stack of books through the library on an ordinary day. In the middle of that routine, violent shaking suddenly tears through the library, forcing him to react as the shelves begin to rattle around him. Realizing it is an earthquake, he turns an alarm just as a girl screams and loses her footing in the chaos. He sees books and shelves crashing down above the child, and the danger hits him in an instant. Without hesitation, he throws himself over the girl to shield her as debris slams down, while a looming figure approaches through the confusion. Returning to the present, he says he knows it sounds insane, but all he remembers is trying to save that little girl during the earthquake. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Looking down on him coldly, she says his excuse is unbearable and pathetic, then declares that if he claims to have forgotten, she will remind him of the crime he committed. The princess coldly lists his offenses, saying he confined a maid for months over spilled tea, punished and overworked her beyond reason, lashed out at an attendant who touched him while helping him dress, and even threw a vase at her, adding that only his noble status kept such disgraceful conduct from being punished sooner. Clenching her fist, she says that even if he despised women, they believed marriage might eventually reform him, but he still crossed a line. She erupts in fury and accuses him of going so far as to try to poison her. He freezes in shock, only able to repeat the word poison in disbelief. The narration reveals that a poison tester died in her place and that death became proof that the princess had narrowly escaped being murdered. She declares that as the Duke's only heir, he probably thought no one could punish him, but makes it clear he no longer has any value to her. With absolute finality, the princess announces that she will instead marry the third prince of a neighboring kingdom. Watching from the side, the attendants realize the rumors were true and quietly identify her as that prince's intended bride. Looking down at him, the princess asks Evan whether he still has anything left to say for himself. Cornered and overwhelmed, he awkwardly stammers out hesitant congratulations to Her Highness. The cup shatters across the floor, and the sudden crash makes him stare up in alarm. Pointing at him in outrage, the princess orders the insolent man to be thrown into prison at once. The armored guards right away obey and seize him as they acknowledge her command. Panicking, he hurriedly tells them to wait. As he is dragged away, he blurts out that he is not the person they are calling Evan. The guards shut him down at once, telling him resistance is futile and ordering him to stop struggling. Held tightly between the two guards, he grows visibly flustered as the situation turns awkward and impossible to escape. Overwhelmed by the close pressure, he panics internally and wonders why they are crowding him so much. Trying to think fast, he realizes events are spiraling far too quickly and worries that if this continues, his situation will only get worse. As they keep hold of him, he notices them muttering under their breath, and the atmosphere grows increasingly strange and uncomfortable. As the guards pin him in place, a violent shock runs through him and his whole body jerks in alarm. At the same time, he overhears two disturbing voices muttering unsettling thoughts, making the atmosphere deeply uncomfortable. Startled, he freezes and wonders if he really just heard someone say that. One guard sharply orders him to keep walking and stop looking around, while another voice keeps fixating on him in a way that makes the situation even more uncomfortable. The guards accuse him of trying to poison the princess and warn him to prepare himself, even as one of them reacts to his frightened expression in a way that feels increasingly disturbing. Hearing that, he grows uneasy and wonders if they are seriously thinking such things. Dragged between the two armored women, he looks trapped as they keep him restrained, and the pressure around him becomes impossible to ignore. As they move through the corridor, he realizes there are two separate voices and cannot understand why both of them are saying such disturbing things. A moment later, he is thrown into a prison cell, and the heavy lock snaps shut behind him. Left alone at last, he exhales shakily and decides to piece together everything he knows so far. As he reviews what he has heard, he learns that Evan Verlaine was a high noble's son, once engaged to the first princess, and that his reputation painted him as violently abusive and deeply hostile toward women. Looking at his own hand, he realizes with disbelief that this body can somehow hear the thoughts of other people. The guard's private thoughts turn openly disturbing as one fixates on his frightened expression and another becomes strangely obsessed, making the whole situation feel deeply uncomfortable. He tries to make sense of their appearance, noticing that despite their armor they still seem quite young, which only leaves him more unsettled by their behavior. Thinking back, he admits he has never even had a girlfriend and wonders whether all girls think like this, or whether he is imagining too much. Sitting alone in the cell, he considers whether this body's unusual nature might be affecting their reactions. He then reasons that if men constantly faced this kind of harassment, it would explain why someone like Evan had come to distrust women. For the moment, he forces himself to stop spiraling and decides that his priority should be finding a way out. Before he can act, a woman arrives outside the bars and addresses him formally as Lord Verlaine. The woman coldly informs him that she is about to explain the punishment awaiting him from this point on. The woman introduces herself as Renée Lefort, a first-rank court official. Renée formally states that she oversees palace categories and handles the knight's affairs, then politely acknowledges Lord Verlaine. As he anxiously wonders what will happen to him, he gets briefly distracted by her appearance and forces himself to refocus. Renée explains that treason against the crown usually ends in death, and she confirms that the poison intended for Her Highness was personally examined and found to be real. Hearing that, he panics and blurts out that a death sentence cannot be happening. The narration clarifies that the death penalty, known as execution by guillotine, is an extremely severe punishment and has not been used in 150 years. Renée adds that sentencing a duke's heir to death is effectively impossible, so that charge has been dropped. She continues that because of his outrageous conduct and disrespect, and because his engagement has now been called off, Her Highness instead demanded that he be sentenced to lifelong servitude, leaving him stunned by the term. He is horrified as the implication sinks in, thinking this absurd world is turning into something unbearable, yet realizing he would still remain a slave regardless. Renée concludes that by ruling of Her Majesty, his punishment has been finalized and he is to be married into the Margrave of Couvelier's family. He struggles to understand the sentence, asking what it means to be married into the Margrave family and what kind of punishment this is. Renée abruptly shifts the conversation and asks whether Lord Verlaine is a reincarnator from Japan. She reminds him that he mentioned isekai reincarnation stories earlier and reveals that she herself is also a reincarnator. He freezes in shock and asks if she is serious. Renée answers without hesitation that she is completely serious. She asks whether Lord Verlaine regained memories of a past life around the time of his condemnation. He says yes, but explains that it was less like recovering memories and more like his soul suddenly took over this body. Renée repeats his wording in surprise, focusing on the idea that his soul took over. Troubled by that answer, she admits that what he described sounds deeply concerning. He says that to him, This world feels like something straight out of an Otome game or a teen novel. Renee explains that she is certain this world is set in the Otome game Hanasaku Otome no Kantata, though more than a century seems to have passed since the original story ended. She adds that even the place names and countries match the game exactly, and some people appear to be descendants of the original characters, leaving him stunned. Renee reveals that because the ratio of men to women is about 1 to 99, society itself has become severely distorted. That claim makes him pause in shock, and he realizes he has not seen a single man anywhere. As he processes this from inside the cell, she dryly remarks that most men would probably be thrilled by the idea and imagine themselves suddenly in high demand. Embarrassed, he awkwardly admits that maybe she has a point. She right away warns him not to expect too much, saying he will only end up disappointed. Renee explains that men are so scarce they are overprotected and raised to become arrogant and selfish, especially among the nobility, where she bluntly says many of them are simply awful. From across the bars, she sums up the world harshly, saying most women desperately want men while most men resent women, and that is simply how society functions. After laying out that grim reality, she falls silent, and he lowers his gaze as the weight of her words finally sinks in. Still overwhelmed, he says he is stunned and has no idea what to do, while Renee coolly notes that for someone showing so little, a fellow reincarnator should look more shaken. Trying to steady himself, he decides the only thing left is to wait and see how this unfolds. Renee formally introduces herself, explaining that she has been assigned to watch over and escort Lord Verlaine, and he awkwardly confirms that he will be under her care. Through the prison bars, they cautiously reach out and exchange a hesitant handshake. The instant their hands meet, a sharp jolt seems to pass between them and the air suddenly grows tense. As she looks him over, Renee thinks that even if the Queen approved sending him into that infamous Margrave territory, he does not seem so terrible, and she quietly resolves to do everything she can to keep him safe. Forcing an uneasy smile, he asks her to take good care of him. As the scene shifts, Renee cannot help wondering what the Margrave is really like. The story cuts to the Margrave lands of Cuvelier. In the new location, a cheerful girl runs ahead, excitedly calling out to her older sister. The two women return and announce themselves, with the cheerful one calling to Marielle and Agnes that they are back. Marielle and Agnes face the returning pair in front of the corpse of a massive monster, a grim reminder of how dangerous the territory is. Agnes timidly welcomes them back, while Marielle warmly says she is grateful the two of them returned safely. One of the sisters warns that the monsters have been acting strangely and says they may need to prepare for a large-scale invasion, but the armored woman tells her not to worry yet and says they will deal with it when the time comes. The two warriors pause in confusion, but Agnes suddenly cuts in and says that can wait because an urgent decree has arrived from Her Majesty the Queen. The scene shifts indoors as the women gather in a formal room beneath the shadow of the Cuvelier estate to discuss the royal order. One of them angrily protests that even the House of Cuvelier, the kingdom's shield, is being treated lightly, and she snaps that calling this a reward is absurd because it is nothing but a heap of trouble dumped on them. Marielle reflects that while finding a husband is the highest priority for their territory, accepting the notorious Evan as a groom is an entirely different matter. The other woman remarks that the royal court probably sees it as a favor because he is still the son of a high-ranking noble. Marielle flatly points out that he is also, technically, the legitimate heir of a duke's house. Marielle explains that House Cuvelier is, at least in name, a high-ranking noble family, so they can only arrange marriages with duke-level houses or above. She adds that their land is constantly threatened by monsters, and because the territory is so dangerous, every marriage proposal so far has been rejected by the other side. Another woman bluntly says that if Evan resists, they can just force him into obedience and make him do his duty. The cheerful girl right away agrees and says he is not being sent there as punishment anyway, so they might as well treat him like property. Marielle calmly notes that she has heard Evan Verlaine hates women, then proposes banning him from marrying anyone else, keeping him confined, and forcing him to do his duty. With a cold smile, she concludes that for an unmarried noble like him, that arrangement should suit him perfectly. The scene shifts to Evan in confinement as he reflects that no one would believe him even if he said he had been reincarnated into another world. He recalls that all he remembers is dying after being crushed by a bookshelf during an earthquake, then being reborn in another world. He bitterly realizes it even began with the classic broken engagement setup, and he wonders if becoming a villain heir really means he is trapped in that kind of story. A bespectacled woman explains that, according to Renee, this world follows an Otome game, while Evan is stunned that before he can even grasp the situation, he is already being married into a Margrave family. Evan struggles to make sense of his situation and wonders why he was reincarnated into a game world he never even played. He bitterly thinks this outcome is still easier than being thrown into some grand quest like defeating a demon king, and he notes that there are at least a few advantages. He reveals that after reincarnating, he gained a cheat-like power that lets him read the thoughts of anyone he touches. He adds that all the women around him are unbelievably beautiful, which makes him suspect even more strongly that this really is an Ottomy game world. When a female prison guard appears, Evan assumes she is probably just some background extra, yet he is stunned that even a guard looks unusually polished. His gaze lingers on her, and he becomes visibly flustered by the situation. The guard catches him staring and directly asks what he is looking at, throwing him completely off balance. Evan freezes in panic and can barely force out a response as the tension spikes in an instant. The guard teases him with a smile, calling him young master and asking if he is staring at her a little too much. Completely embarrassed, Evan hurriedly insists he was not looking and blurts out that a girl should not say things like that. The guard wonders why he is acting so shocked when, to her, this much seems perfectly normal. She reflects that she only meant to tease him a little, and his reaction makes her suspect the rumors that he dislikes women may not have been true after all. Evan is overwhelmed as he thinks she is openly crossing boundaries, while he panics and blurts out in disbelief that the women in this world cannot all be like this. With a playful smile, the guard says that if he wants, she will even let him make contact, pointing out that he clearly seems interested. Evan stares at her in shock and realizes he actually can, leaving him completely stunned. Looking embarrassed but still going along with it, the guard hesitantly tells him to go ahead. Evan spirals inwardly, thinking this is something he never experienced in his previous life, and the pressure of the moment nearly overwhelms him. The guard is shaken by the fact that a man in this world would want that kind of contact, and the interaction turns intensely awkward. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Realizing she seems to be enjoying his flustered reaction, Evan is left stunned and thinks the whole situation has become completely unreal. Flushed and nervous, the guard boldly asks how she seems to him, and Evan stammers that she looks amazing. When Evan reacts awkwardly, she tells him not to think women are disgusting and reminds him that he is the one acting strangely. Trying to explain himself, Evan awkwardly says he heard that people deprived of close maternal affection can grow unusually fixated on this kind of contact, leaving her confused. As the tension lingers in the corridor, Evan thinks he was still incredibly lucky. The guard shyly admits that for a low-ranking girl like her, getting this kind of attention from a man almost never happens. Evan finally realizes why she had seemed so pleased and is shocked all over again by how extreme the 1 man to 99 women imbalance really is. Hesitant and still trying to understand, Evan asks whether that means she would have been happy even with less direct contact. She brightly tells him that of course she would, adding that if she tried to seek out a handsome man like him in that kind of place, her entire yearly pay would vanish at once. Laughing, the guard says Evan really knows nothing about this world, then explains that such places are expensive because there are so few men. Still blushing, she pauses and signals that there's something else she wants to say. The guard excitedly says the rumors were true, praising Evan for being kind even to someone like her and saying he does not act superior at all, while Evan awkwardly starts to protest that he is basically a captive. Blushing, she adds that this is not all and reminds him that he even made contact with her, which only makes the moment more uncomfortable. As their hands meet through the bars, she softly calls out to him as her young master. Gathering her courage, the guard asks whether he would escape together with her. Startled, Evan asks if she means running away and warns that she will be in trouble too if she does that. She insists she does not want someone like him to go through this, saying she heard the Quivalier family are harsh and that if he goes there he will be treated terribly. Holding on to him, she says she knows they live in different worlds and that unlike him, she has hidden motives and may have done something terrible. Even so, she says she still wants to help him somehow. When Evan gently pats her head, she breaks down in overwhelmed gratitude and thanks him for worrying about her. Evan quickly apologizes and worries that he upset her, then reflects that he ended up treating her like the child who used to visit the library. Evan is shaken by her offer and thinks he never wanted to drag a kind girl like her into something like this. The girl insists she will be fine and says the danger at the frontier might only be a rumor, but she still cannot leave him here. Another girl nervously says that if he stays here for now, she will do everything she can to make sure Evan is comfortable. Before anything else can be said, a sudden crashing sound shatters the moment. A woman arrives to find Renee Laforêt calmly seated before Evan's cell with drinks and gifts, while attendants stand nearby. Staring at the absurd sight, she bluntly asks what exactly is going on here. Flustered, Evan explains that after meeting him, the guards started spreading all kinds of favorable rumors about him, and as promised, he has been living surprisingly comfortably. Since then, presents have been pouring in non-stop along with rumors calling Evan a good person, warning that headpats are dangerous, and treating the whole thing like a strange craze. The women soon began asking for headpats themselves, and the scene turned oddly familiar despite the prison bars between them. Evan realizes in disbelief that his habit of patting their heads seems to have started an entirely new obsession in this world, and he is baffled by what kind of prison security this even is. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. The woman abruptly announces that they are leaving, then says there is something more important to deal with. She reveals that Her Highness has been pushing for this, and when Evan reacts in shock, she makes it clear the decision was never sudden on their side. The girl quietly says she understands, and Evan thanks her for being so understanding. Evan says he has no ties to this world, so wherever he goes would make no real difference to him. A carriage sets out with guards and attendants as the group leaves the prison behind and heads toward a distant estate. Inside the carriage, one woman notes that they are not even trying to hide their intentions, while Evan sits beside her in uneasy silence. She observes that despite escorting the son of a high-ranking noble, his protection amounts to only 4 knights and a few mercenaries. Looking at the hired guards, she concludes that Her Highness must truly despise that man. Evan reflects that this kind of treatment was still at least a proper send-off, while the woman falls into thoughtful silence. The woman remarks that it had been a slight hold, while Evan reacts in confused embarrassment. Someone explains that they will keep traveling by carriage for the next few days, and warns Evan to take care since the roads are rough and there will be no smooth suspension. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. The carriage continues across the water, and Evan can only hope the rough travel does not get any worse. At a distant castle, news arrives that Evan Verlaine has departed for the frontier. Hearing the report, the seated woman calmly acknowledges it and takes it in without surprise. Another woman says the prison guards behaved inappropriately and made a shameless spectacle right up until Evan was sent off, adding that the hatred directed at him is almost astonishing. The seated woman repeats the report with quiet interest, then remarks that it must have been quite an ordeal for a man known to dislike women. She orders a messenger to be sent to the Marquis and says a personal gift should be delivered on her behalf. With that in mind, he turns toward the quest board and tells her they will start by checking what beginner work is available. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Chin becomes flustered, suddenly aware that she fits his expectations more than he thought. As she rushes ahead, Shin protests that it feels too sudden and asks why they are not starting with an easier guild request, only for someone to firmly tell him to watch how she handles this first. She stops and turns back in confusion, visibly unsettled by what she just heard. She asks Mr. Taishi if he truly intends to leave right now, and he can only answer that even if she objects, the decision is already made. Shin leans into it and insists that going on an adventure is essential for adventurers, convincing himself that this is exactly what youth is for. The girl hesitates and admits it sounds dangerous, and Shin notices at once that she does not actually seem excited. Shin quickly says it is fine and promises that if anything happens, he will protect her, adding that if things get too dangerous, they can always run. His promise deeply affects her, and she stares at him in silence as his words keep echoing in her mind. Shin abruptly ruins the moment and insists he only said that because he wants to go on an adventure, swearing that no matter what happens, he will never say anything beyond that. The girl formally declares that she will accept this guild quest and leaves the rest to Mr. Taishi. Before Shin can even respond, she suddenly announces that they should leave at once, catching him completely off guard. She is stunned that Mr. Taishi was dragged out so suddenly, while Shin is left trying to process what just happened. Her mood flips in an instant, and she excitedly realizes the topic is a treasure box. Shin explains that Mr. Taishi can use a treasure box, casually comparing it to storage, and she right away asks if that means it is incredibly rare. As Shin runs through the skill list in his head, he realizes this ability is not treated as a major power in this world either. She says carrying that many items while traveling must be difficult and marvels at how useful it would be for luggage, while Shin avoids the full truth and says he cannot explain because part of his power came from a mysterious being. Trying to steer the conversation away, Shin awkwardly asks Mari what kind of weapon she uses. Mary hesitates with an uneasy smile and timidly answers that it is a sword. Mary suddenly suggests a spar so he can judge the extent of her fighting ability, and Shin is left wondering why she would even propose that. Mary lunges into the spar, but Shin slips away with ease, leaving her startled as she nearly loses control of her own movement. Watching her form, Shin gets a bad feeling and points out that her stance is off, telling her to hurry and try again while she fumbles awkwardly. Mari charges with a shout, but her swing is wild and unstable, and the exchange collapses instantly. She crashes to the ground in a humiliating heap, and Shin can only stare in silence before dryly acknowledging the result. Shin abruptly says they should forget about forming a guild party, and Mari is left stunned as she desperately tries to stop him. Panicking, Mari grabs at him and begs him to wait, while Shin realizes why she has not lasted with other parties and wonders just how much trouble she has caused. Shin awkwardly tells Mari that, as honest advice, she should give up on being an adventurer, return to her hometown, and live a normal life. Mary goes still and admits in a broken voice that she has nowhere to return to. That answer makes Shin freeze, and in the next instant Mari suddenly runs from him. Shin calls out in alarm and asks what is wrong, but Mari can only tremble in distress as the air turns painfully awkward. Mari warns Mr. Taishi in a shaky voice that something is coming as a heavy sound draws near. A small boar suddenly bursts from the brush, crackling with dangerous energy as it charges straight at them. Shin freezes in disbelief and realizes a small boar has appeared in a place where it should never be. Mari stares at the beast in shock, unable to believe that the creature before them is supposed to be only a small boar. Shin urgently asks Mari if they can defeat it together, then says he will take the front line himself. Mari can only crouch and shake, completely swallowed by fear. As Shin raises his weapon, he bitterly reflects that he expected to fight in another world, not end up protecting someone all over again. Mari panics and shouts that the monster is charging from the right. Shin barely slips past the boar's rush, and he realizes just how close that hit was. Even while moving, Shin admits in alarm that the beast is far faster than he expected. Shin runs in panic as the small boar keeps chasing him, and he cannot understand why it refuses to back off. As he cuts sharply to the side, Shin realizes he cannot keep running forever and forces himself to stop hesitating. Shin right away corrects himself and decides this is actually the perfect chance to test his quarterstaff. He brings the staff down with full force and slams it straight into the boar. Shin coolly judges that pole weapons like lances and spears can be used without issue, then fires off a wind cutter. The attack fells the small boar in a single blow, leaving Mari staring in utter disbelief. Mari runs to him in relief and says she is glad Mr. Taishi is safe, while Shin stands beside the fallen boar catching his breath. Shin falls silent with his back turned as Mari hesitantly calls out to Mr. Taishi. He suddenly snaps at her and calls her an idiot, leaving Mari frozen where she stands. Gripping his weapon, Shin says Mari needs to understand that adventurers live side by side with danger. Mari trembles and admits she cannot protect herself, leaving the words hanging in shame as she asks if that means she can protect no one. Shin walks ahead and bluntly says he is only doing his best for himself, while Mari quietly confesses that she is not strong enough to take care of others. Shin explains that normally even a small boar should be manageable for F-rank and E-rank adventurers, then lets the implication sink in. Mary lowers her head and says she already knew that, and still chose to go on an adventure. As Mari calls after him, Shin sharply reminds her that she came only because he said he would protect her. Shin angrily demands what kind of adventurer cannot even protect herself, then warns that her own life is on the line too. Shaken and full of shame, Mari admits she had been far too careless. Mary reflects that even though she never had the ability to become an adventurer, she still joined the fight and only caused Mr. Taishi trouble. Fighting back tears, Mari says Mr. Taishi was the only one who protected her. Mari declares that Mr. Taishi is her inspiration, and Shin is left speechless as she quickly apologizes for saying too much. Shin awkwardly reassures Mari and says he is glad she is safe, and Mari quietly thanks him. Mari jolts in stunned surprise at that sudden kindness. Shin awkwardly says the important thing is that Mari is safe, then adds that she can wash off the dirt at the river, and Mari blankly asks if she really looks that dirty. Mary starts remembering that when the small boar appeared, she became so frightened that she froze. With tears in her eyes, Mari realizes in humiliation that she lost control in the panic. As Shin reacts in shock, Mari suddenly says she cannot face things anymore, then hurriedly corrects herself. Smiling nervously, Mari suddenly asks Mr. Taishi to take responsibility for what happened, making the moment painfully awkward. Shin blushes and stammers in disbelief, then demands to know what she is even talking about. Trying to explain herself, Mari says that the two of them then went into the forest together. Mary suddenly senses danger and urgently warns Mr. Taishi that two enemies are coming from his right rear, just as the creatures let out a shriek. As the creatures rush in, Mari urgently tells Mr. Taishi to stop and warns him from behind, then cries out another sharp alert as he moves to intercept. Mary quickly reads the battlefield and warns Mr. Taishi that 5 more are coming from his right, and he right away acknowledges her call. She identifies the next threat as a small boar and adds that the one after that will come from the left rear. As Shin cuts the beast down, he is startled that Mari cannot really fight and yet keeps feeding him precise information. He realizes that her warnings are making the battle far easier for him. Shin then remembers that Mari had been the first to notice the presence of the small boar earlier. He recalls the old man's remark and concludes that Mari is probably extremely sensitive to danger. Shin figures Mari may not be completely useless after all, and she quietly seems to reach the same uneasy conclusion. Catching his breath after the clash, Shin mutters in weary frustration. Surrounded by fallen beasts, the two of them pant heavily and confirm they somehow survived the fight. As they head back, he says they need to stay cautious because monsters could still be lurking nearby. Hearing the count of 3 small boars and 29 goblins, he is visibly shaken by the total. The bald man falls silent for a moment, then says he is glad the two of them made it back safely. Mari looks exhausted while Shin awkwardly tries to answer. Mari says the experience was far more terrifying than games or fiction, and when someone reacts in surprise, she quickly pulls back and drops the subject. Mary excitedly praises Mr. Taishi, saying he defeated the monsters one after another and then stored them all in his treasure box before bringing them back. He explains that the tool is also recorded on their adventurer card, so the card can serve that function as well. As coins are set out, he says this is the reward for subjugation and explains that the amount depends on size and condition, with small boars and goblins worth about 5 large copper coins each. The bald man then asks how the two of them intend to divide the reward. Shin hesitates at the question, while the explanation follows that rewards are usually calculated based on how much each member contributed to the subjugation. Mary abruptly protests that she did not contribute anything in combat, while someone calmly tells her that if that is how she sees it, then so be it. The reward money is pushed across the table without the slightest hesitation. The bald man explains that Mari drew the map herself and also noticed the monsters before Shin did and warned him, leaving her startled by the praise. Shin quickly says that amount sounds fair because she guided him in battle on how many enemies were coming and from which direction. Looking at the coins, Shin says that since he handled most of the fighting, he will take 1 share and give Mari the rest. He reflects that the two of them will probably become well known at the guild because of Mari's unusual swordplay, and especially because an adventurer with a treasure box is extremely rare. He then adds that a girl with a strong gift for detecting danger makes the pair stand out even more. The bald man laughs and says the two of them make a powerful combination, adding that such a team would be popular. Both of them turn red and fall silent as the people around them cheer the idea on. Mary nervously calls out to Mr. Taishi as if she still has something important left to say. After leaving the guild, Mari thanks him for the day, and Shin quietly says he feels the same. Mari then hesitantly admits that she was not very helpful, leaving Shin unsettled by her sudden self-doubt. With a bright smile, Mari asks if they can take the guild's requests together again next time. Her words catch Shin off guard, and all he can do is stare back in silence. As he walks away, he reflects that the world somehow looked different after that moment, though he still had not realized something important. He slowly opens his eyes in confusion, wondering why he is in his in-room and when he even fell asleep. A pounding headache crashes over him, and he struggles to piece anything together. Feeling like he is trapped in a brutal hangover, he reaches out weakly and asks for water. He then notices someone beside him, and the air instantly turns painfully tense. Shocked, he jolts upright and reacts like a man who has woken into an entirely different world. As birds flutter outside the inn, Shin is left reeling, realizing the situation is worse than he ever imagined. Mari admits she could not really help that day, but she eagerly asks Shin to take guild requests with her again next time, and he can only give a dazed reply as her words sink in. As Shin walks away in a haze, Mari watches him go while he feels as if the world around him has suddenly shifted. Back at the inn, Mr. Utz opens the door and casually asks if Wissy has already returned, abruptly cutting through the moment. Mary explains that she came over because Mr. Utz told her about the inn, and after hearing that staying here is cheaper than her current place, she cheerfully confirms it while Mr. Utz warns them not to stay out too late. Mary suddenly notices him and blurts out in surprise when she realizes Mr. Taishi is there. Taishi is just as caught off guard by the reunion, while Mari calls it an incredible coincidence and politely asks if she can eat with him, and he agrees at once. As she sits down across from him, Mari happily remarks that being in the same inn as Mr. Taishi makes her very glad. Behind her friendly smile, Mari reveals to herself that this is no coincidence at all, because her only goal is to get closer to Mr. Taishi no matter the cost. While they share a meal, Mari quietly tells herself that her plan to get close to Mr. Taishi has finally begun. As she drinks, Mari says she was just wondering what was going to happen today, and she adds that he must have been thinking the same thing. Taishi awkwardly thanks her for the money she earned, and Mari right away brightens and says they should celebrate with a drink because he is right. The two raise their cups together and share a cheerful toast as the mood briefly turns lively. Trying to keep the conversation going, Mari asks why Mr. Taishi became an adventurer, and he hesitates at the sudden question. Taishi nervously explains that he spent all his time training with his master in his hometown, wanted to see how far he could go, and adds that for various reasons he cannot return home anymore. As she sips her drink, Mari senses he is dodging the real reason and quietly wonders if that is really all. She then asks where he is from, and after a pause, Taishi says he is from Earth. Mary freezes at the word Earth, staring ahead in blank shock as the answer settles in. Sweat runs down Mari's face as she admits she has never heard of it, while Taishi hurriedly insists it is a very distant place and nervously tries to support his own excuse. While looking at him, Mari quietly notes his unusual features and composed appearance, giving the sense that her attention is shifting toward him in a new way. Mari smiles to herself and thinks that the heroes from the stories she used to read back home often felt just like this, while her emotions begin to rise. Standing alone in thought, Mari realizes that just like him, she also has no home to return to. Mari asks what he plans to do now and whether there is someone he can rely on, then right away thinks that the person he can rely on is right in front of him. Flushed with determination, Mari decides that somehow she wants to stay by Mr. Taishi's side, while also reminding herself that today still gives her a chance to move things forward. Taishi, already drunk, slurs that they are completely out of alcohol. Mari suddenly calls out for a recommended drink for Mr. Taishi, excusing herself as she quickly seizes control of the moment. Leaning in close, Mari quietly calls to Pinia and asks for 1 bottle of nectar. Pinia is left stunned by the request, while Mari smoothly insists that it is only for a moment and Taishi watches in confusion. Presenting the bottle with a bright smile, Mari says they should enjoy it tonight, admits she truly has nowhere to go back to, and urges Mr. Taishi to try it. As he drinks heavily, Taishi drunkenly protests that if she cannot fight then she should have said so first, then blurts out a worried complaint about her own safety. Mari realizes Taishi is the type who starts lecturing once he is drunk, as he blurts out that it is improper and says he cannot believe a girl her age would stay in the same inn as a man she just met, leaving her startled. Slumped over with a hiccup, Taishi warns that her being so noticeable makes the situation dangerous and says that if this keeps up, something terrible could happen. Mary freezes, then starts wondering if his anger really means he is worried about her. As she looks at him, Mari remembers how he protected her and showed his gentle side, and she thinks he looked genuinely impressive. Mari reflects that every moment since they met in town felt almost guided by fate, as if their encounter had been led by something greater. While staring at him, Mari realizes she had already come to like Mr. Taishi from the very beginning, and she finally asks why he became an adventurer. After a brief hesitation, Mari decides to reveal that she is actually a princess from a certain country. Mari explains that 2 years earlier she had an arranged marriage meeting with a neighboring country's notorious prince, a man infamous for his awful personality. Half drunk, Taishi bluntly guesses she ran away from the castle because she hated that future, and Mari snaps back in shock, demanding how he could know that. Taishi calmly says it sounds like a very common story, and Mari right away protests, begging Mr. Taishi to believe her. Taishi drunkenly reasons that if Mari is really a princess, then ending up alone with her at the inn would put him in a difficult position, and he calls it the kind of situation where an adventurer could be forced into a royal mess. With teary eyes, Mari asks if his reaction means he is disappointed in her. Still flustered, Taishi asks whether Mari has no family to return to, then insists that instead of adventuring, someone in her situation should stay safely in her hometown. Looking shaken and vulnerable, Mari quietly wonders if he thinks poorly of her. Taishi right away panics and tries to correct her, insisting that was not what he meant at all. As Mari shifts closer, Taishi can only stare in stunned confusion while the atmosphere turns tense. In his drunken state, Taishi suddenly collapses forward, throwing the moment into a chaotic and awkward turn. Mari gives a small laugh and says that from her point of view, she is actually far more worried about Mr. Taishi. As she steps around him, Mari reminds Taishi that he himself warned her that someone in her position could invite trouble if left defenseless. With an uneasy smile, Mari tells him not to worry, says he can just stay there, and claims she will handle the rest as the situation grows more uncomfortable. As Taishi starts to protest, Mari cheerfully says she had planned this and gives a playful approval while he recoils in alarm. With a bright smile, Mari tells him to take his time, acting completely at ease as the situation remains awkward. The room is silent as Taishi slowly regains consciousness, still sweating from the chaos of the night before. Taishi wakes with a pounding head, asks for water, and then freezes when he notices someone sleeping beside him. Mary warmly greets him good morning, making the shock of the moment hit even harder. Taishi instantly rejects the situation in total disbelief. Yawning, Mari teases that he is being cruel for shouting after they spent the night in the same room. Panicking, Taishi demands to know why Mari is in his room, and she casually points out that he does not remember what happened after all. Mari explains that in Taishi's own terms, a marriageable girl ended up staying in the same room as a man she knew, and she adds that Taishi got recklessly drunk, called attention to her appearance, and put her through a lot, leaving him shaken in horror. Mari then declares that she now belongs with Mr. Taishi and starts to say more, but the moment turns deeply uncomfortable as Taishi is left overwhelmed. Taishi's mind spins as he tells himself to calm down, admits his memory is completely blank, and panics that if he does not take responsibility, then Mari's reputation could be at risk, until her voice cuts in to ask if he is even listening. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Taishi reacts in total shock as Mari explains that when she said she was afraid, he held her close to comfort her, and he desperately begs her to stop before she shares any more details. Overcome with guilt, Taishi clutches his head and falls into silence, consumed by a crushing sense of responsibility. Unable to even look at her, Taishi quietly asks whether Mari is all right after everything that happened. Mary looks at him uncertainly and softly asks whether he is angry with her. Taishi answers that anger will not solve anything, and says there is no use crying over what has already been done. As he gently pats her head, Taishi says he also understands Mari's resolve. Letting out a sigh, Taishi bitterly admits that he cannot remember what happened at all, and calls it a complete waste. Mari moves in close, pats him, and asks if they should go over it all again, making the atmosphere turn tense as Taishi freezes. A knock jolts Taishi, and Mari cheerfully steps in with a bright good morning as she says she came to clean the room. Caught off guard while changing, Taishi hurriedly tells her he is still getting ready and begs her to come back later. He quickly throws something on and turns toward the door, only to find Mari still there, leaving him speechless. Mary excitedly asks what he is looking at, and Taishi awkwardly admits she looks very nice even while getting dressed. With a teasing smile, Mary asks if he is getting flustered again, making the situation awkward all over again. Taishi, flustered and trying to recover, says he guesses he will protect her once again despite the little trouble she causes, while Mari blurts out in disbelief at how he could say that. As the mood lightens, they agree to go eat, and the narration notes that the number of Taishi's companions has officially increased by 1. While they walk together, Taishi asks what is going on with Mari since she keeps drifting close whenever people pass by. Mari happily stays near him and says it looks like a date, while Taishi reacts in shock at hearing her call it that. Smiling with satisfaction, Mari agrees, and Taishi reflects that walking beside such a pretty girl is something he never could have imagined in his previous world. Taishi reflects that he had been completely happy in his old life despite being overweight, then stares ahead in disbelief as he wonders if he really is in another world. A woman at the weapon shop welcomes them as Mari steps inside. Taishi asks if it is alright for them to look around again, and the shopkeeper cheerfully tells them to go ahead. Taishi explains that although the quarterstaff was very useful against those monsters before, it has become badly worn from all the abuse, so he came back today to choose another weapon. Taishi asks Mari whether she has ever come to a weapon shop before, and after she admits only a few times and says she is not very good at fighting, he bluntly concludes that she is basically helpless. Mari says she wants to choose a weapon that can be used even more effectively in the next battle, and the shopkeeper tells her to come along for guidance. Left by himself while Lewis goes to help Mari, Taishi stands alone and gloomily wonders what about him, sounding a little jealous. A black cat suddenly appears and remarks that Taishi seems to put his weapon through difficult situations, startling him on the spot. As Taishi reels in shock that the feline shop owner can talk, the cat explains that the weapon can be held in battle but is meant for mages fighting from the rear, adding that a magician should not be on the front line anyway. The cat asks whether Taishi wants a weapon like the same one as before, and when he says he would like something more durable, it right away asks about his budget. The shopkeeper asks what Mari wants, and Mari shyly says she wants a light crossbow she can handle, which the woman right away understands. Taishi bargains surprisingly well and decides they should buy everything at once, thinking even a small discount matters. The shop agrees to include 24 crossbow arrows as a bonus, then completes the sale while admitting the extra is modest. Taishi decides the weapon suits Mari well, while for himself he chooses a battle staff and is told it is almost the same as his last one, so it should feel familiar. Taishi accepts the purchase, and the shopkeeper thanks him warmly for his business. Mari calls out to Taishi and urges him to come see what she found. Mari proudly says the weapon makes her feel like the hero of an adventure, while Taishi privately wonders where the sudden confidence came from. Mari adds that as long as she is with Taishi, she is not afraid to go on adventures. Taishi teasingly points out that this was what she really wanted to say, and Mari freezes in embarrassment. Mari blurts out that Taishi somehow saw right through her, then wonders if this is some kind of adventurer's special power, while Taishi can only laugh at her flustered reaction. After that, Taishi spends the next few days training. During practice, Ethan calls for Taishi to come at him, and Taishi right away charges in to meet the challenge. Taishi spars with Ethan as part of his training and manages to keep up with him. He notices that Mari is also being trained properly by other adventurers, who guide her through the basics while one of them admits it looks pretty rough. Even so, the training continues with relentless intensity. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Still, Mari manages to land a hit, and Taishi realizes it would not be wrong to say she is steadily getting stronger. As his own level rises, Taishi also gains skill points, and he decides he wants to strengthen the magic enhancement, recovery, and elemental magic skills he first learned in this world. Thinking that a fantasy world should include magic, Taishi eagerly decides to learn fire, water, and earth magic too. He spends 3 skill points on each, raising fire, water, and earth magic to level 2 alongside wind magic at level 2. Taishi realizes the skill point system lets him branch into a huge range of skill types and levels. He recalls that on his first day in this world, a mysterious voice calling itself Elyard told him all this, which still leaves him with many questions. As he reviews the long list, he notes that there seem to be far more than 100 skills, then notices that unarmed combat, archery, and cooking were already level 1 from the start, while negotiation is level 2. He realizes those starting abilities reflect experience he built up in his previous world. Taishi links negotiation to his background in hospitality and sales, remembers learning Shorinji Kempo and archery when he was young, and awkwardly concludes that cooking probably came from making his own meals. He reasons that level 3 is instructor class, level 4 is top class, the practical cap seems to be level 5, an average person sits around level 1 or 2, and reaching level 5 would make someone exceptional. Even so, he reminds himself this is only the supposed status system and decides not to dwell too much on whether that mysterious voice can truly be trusted. He calls out to Mari and asks if she has a moment, and she turns around to ask what he needs. Taishi tells Mari that he wants to practice magic and asks her to help him, leaving her stunned as she blurts out in disbelief that she would be helping Taishi. A nearby adventurer tells Taishi not to overdo it, and when something suddenly crashes from a stray hit, Taishi stares in alarm as the tension makes it painfully obvious that was an accident. Taishi explains that if he says he gains some magic through skill points, Mari would probably accept it, and he decides this is the moment to test the other types of magic he can use. Mary hesitates nervously, then says that if he is alright with it, she will help him. Taishi takes his position and calmly instructs Mari to fire arrows at him with the crossbow first. Though startled by the request, Mari steadies herself and gets ready to shoot as the onlookers assure her it is fine and urge her to begin. As the bolt flies toward him, Taishi activates Earth Wall and a solid barrier bursts up in front of him. He notes that, just as expected, Earth Wall lives up to its name and offers powerful defense, then right away tells Mari to fire the next shot. Mari fires another bolt, and Taishi switches to Water Wall as a surging barrier rushes out to meet it. The water barrier freezes around the incoming bolt and shatters it apart in midair. Taishi stares in shock as he realizes just how effective it is, and even he is stunned by the sheer force of it. He concludes that Water Wall has frightening power, since if it struck an enemy directly, it would pierce them and freeze them internally. The onlookers stare in amazement and murmur that it is incredible, while Taishi stays focused and listens to their shaken voices. Taishi lets out the tension in his shoulders and admits he is relieved that was not the magic that hit him before. With renewed confidence, Taishi says he wants to test fire magic next. Marie goes silent in concern, while the others warn that fire sounds dangerous and worry the guild will be furious if the place goes up in flames. Taishi realizes there is also a level 1 pure magic skill called Magic Arrow that can be used without any elemental attribute. Remembering how he once fired it into the sky from the inn window, Taishi concludes that pure magic can launch attribute-free magic arrows, notes that it is far more useful than he expected, and decides to stop testing there, raise the skill to level 2, and later push the related protection skill to level 3. After that, he decides he should raise recovery magic to level 2 as well. Looking over his abilities, Taishi notes that recovery magic level 1 works as healing, while level 2 acts like detoxification and can even help with alcohol, making him think he may never have to suffer another brutal hangover. He then turns to what he considers the most important skill for himself right now, the appraisal eye. With a tense expression, Taishi decides he has to learn the truth about who Mari really is. Mary notices Taishi's unusually serious face and asks why he looks so tense, but he brushes it off and says it is nothing. Taishi changes the subject and asks Mari why she chose to become an adventurer, and she reacts in surprise because she thought she had already told him before. As Taishi struggles to remember, Mari bluntly reveals that she is the first princess of a country, and says she ran away because she was about to be married off for political reasons to a disgraceful prince in a neighboring nation. Mari angrily insists she does not want to return home for at least 2 years, explaining that after 3 years her younger sister will take her place as that prince's spouse, and Taishi is struck by how harshly she sounds despite her gentle appearance. Taishi freezes as the words first princess sink in, and he begins piecing together Mari's true identity. Taishi activates Appraisal Eye, and the result identifies Mari under an alias while revealing that her real name is Mariel Blanc Miss Cronia, and that she is the runaway daughter and first princess of Miss Cronia, second in line to the throne. The truth slams into Taishi as he realizes she really is Miss Cronia's first princess, and panic rises as he wonders how seriously he is supposed to take this and what he should even do now. Staring at Mari, Taishi is overwhelmed by the absurdity of being nothing more than an adventurer traveling beside a nation's princess. He concludes that Mari has been hiding something enormous from him this entire time. Taishi becomes convinced that Mari must have abandoned her country from a place of privilege, especially considering how many knights and mercenaries are probably searching for her. Mary casually says Taishi will keep getting stronger as an adventurer, become a feudal lord, and even build a large household, leaving him stunned by how suddenly she says it. Taishi awkwardly admits he is not against the idea, but he cannot believe a girl like Mari can talk about that so casually. Mary asks whether the idea would really be unacceptable from her point of view, and Taishi is left reeling over what exactly she means. Mari explains that in this world it is not unusual for a male adventurer to have multiple spouses, adding that strong adventurers often pass their talents onto their children because excellent traits tend to be inherited. Taishi can only mutter in surprise, then admits he still does not understand this world's common sense at all. Mari bluntly says adventurers often face death, so this kind of arrangement is easy to accept, since the pressure of that life is too much for one person to carry, and Taishi feels she is being far too direct. After hearing him call it complicated, Mary says one possible answer is for him to show his resolve, though she awkwardly admits she might also be a little jealous. Growing flustered, Mari says that if Taishi had not been with her, her situation might have turned out very differently, and the moment suddenly becomes emotionally tense. Embarrassed, Mari insists she would never say something like that to anyone except Taishi. Taishi stares at her reddened face in shock, overwhelmed by how unexpectedly sincere she seems. Taishi suddenly pulls Mari close and blurts out that what she said is completely unfair, leaving her wide-eyed and flustered. In the tense, awkward closeness, Mari shyly remarks that Taishi probably will not let her rest tonight, and the atmosphere turns uneasy. Taishi answers that what happens next depends on her. As they stay together in silence, Taishi thinks that if Mari is ever hunted by her country, he will take her hand and run away with her. Looking at Mari's sleeping face, Taishi vows that he will make her happy no matter what. A sudden system notification cuts through the mood, and Taishi notices at once that something has changed. He realizes he has gained the shooting skill after borrowing Mari's light crossbow just to clear his head, and he notes that constant training can develop a skill even without spending skill points. Mari runs over calling for Taishi while he concludes it may be better to learn from the basics through practice and save his points. The scene shifts as news arrives that a goblin subjugation request has come in, just as Utsan reported. At the guild counter, adventurers gather around the new request while the room tightens with anticipation. As Taishi arrives with Mari, someone notices that the magician has come, and the crowd right away sees him as a better chance of surviving. Taishi stiffens in embarrassment as the mood around him turns strangely welcoming, while Mari points out that he is like a celebrity and that people are specifically calling him a magician. Taishi reflects that he has spent the past few days training magic, and that may have made him stand out. Looking around the guild's training grounds, Taishi realizes he had not seen any magicians there before. Ethan calls out to Taishi and asks whether he wants to join the operation. Ethan explains that they are about to wipe out goblins in cooperation with other parties and a knightly order, then confidently adds that it should be easy. Taishi notices a female magician named Lynette from the Glendale Kingdom Army's Magician Corps, confirming that the knightly side has brought its own magical support. The request is formally announced as a goblin sweeping operation. A bald adventurer declares that they will attack a goblin village in the forest about half a day's walk from the city, with a subjugation reward of 5 large copper coins per goblin. The crowd erupts in excitement when they hear that, on top of that, each participant will receive 2 silver coins just for joining the operation. The organizer warns the crowd not to expect payment for anyone who does not pull their weight, and the listeners tense at the strict condition. He adds that departure will be when the night bell rings, and the operation may force them to spend 1 or even 2 nights in the forest. He loudly reminds everyone that each person must prepare their own food before leaving. As the room stirs, the bald man signals that he still has one more thing to add. He quickly mentions that preserved food is also being sold cheaply at the guild counter, and the announcement instantly sounds suspiciously convenient. The crowd reacts at once, calling him a cheapskate and mocking the bald man, while Marl also voices his disbelief. Unfazed, the bald adventurer calmly reveals that Ut suggested the idea as a joke. Nearby, one adventurer agrees that being well prepared is better, while a cheerful woman says she will also make sure to prepare properly for the quest. At the counter, someone decides to buy 3 days' worth of preserved food just to be safe, enough for both of them. They add that they should also bring some spare blankets along with the supplies. Marl asks Taishi if they should bring a lantern too, then decides they had better take it just in case. Taishi asks for 3 water skins, saying 1 large bag can work as a water container too, and the bald clerk agrees at once. While checking the written details, Mar worries they will be traveling on foot instead of by carriage, and asks if Taishi can really carry that much, then quietly wonders if it is too much. As the payment goes through, someone wonders just how many things could even fit inside Taishi's treasure box. Taishi calmly admits he does not really know, but says he has never put enough into it to find the limit. Later, wrapped in cloaks beneath the night sky, Marl tells Taishi that it is almost time to go. A small group of adventurers gathers in the street, and at the rear, members of the knightly order come into view. Taishi reassures himself that things should be fine, reminding himself that both he and Marl have been steadily improving through training. He reflects that the number of weapons he can handle is increased, and Marl's shooting skill is sharpened as well. As Taishi stands ready with his gear, he wonders what kind of trouble is waiting for them this time. Taishi agrees, and Marl quietly remarks that the woman is very striking. Taishi thinks parts of the setup look useful, then explains that his own magic was shaped by game-like methods rather than true wizardry, leaving Marl startled by what she hears. Marl notices that Taishi is about to leave, and he comments that those gloves are surprisingly large. As the group advances through the night, it is explained that the scouts are veteran adventurers above level 10. It is then noted that the knights are positioned behind the scouts. Taishi and Marl move with the next group, and it is stated that they are behind the knights. The march continues, and for a while, everything goes smoothly. While footsteps echo through the dark, someone says that sounds good, and another voice agrees. After noticing the traces ahead, Taishi realizes there seem to have been several monster attacks in the area. The formation is explained further as the knights prepare to act as a shield against attacks coming from the front. It is explained that the adventurers can also serve as a shield against attacks from behind. The group notes that this formation is meant to protect the wizards. Taishi recalls that when he first encountered goblins, even the organizing parties had been attacked, and he finds it strange as the sound of battle creeps closer. While one voice says it means nothing if only scattered attacks are targeting this group, an urgent order suddenly rings out for everyone to prepare to intercept a goblin unit. The knights react at once, raising their guard as movement and cries spill out of the darkness. Taishi warns that they need to be careful because the sounds are getting close, then realizes the noise seems to have stopped near the front line. Another adventurer asks if that is the main group, but the reply comes back uncertain. As Taishi tries to move, Marl urgently calls out to him, and someone sharply warns him not to go to the front, leaving her startled. The warning is confirmed as the enemy is suddenly reported to be charging in fast. A pack of goblins bursts forward with weapons raised, charging wildly toward the group. A fighter at the front shouts for everyone to move, and Taishi rushes forward with his weapon as the others follow him into the clash. Taishi swings in a wide arc and strikes the charging goblins, forcing them back before they can close in. As he keeps his spear ready, Taishi mutters that the enemies just keep coming, one after another. Two goblins rush in shouting, and Taishi is thrown off by their sudden behavior as he wonders what is going on. A goblin darts past instead of attacking, and another adventurer can only stare in confusion as he realizes something is wrong. A knight notices it too and says the goblins are running straight through instead of engaging them. Taishi points out that the goblins are moving strangely, and Marl agrees that it looks like they are trying to escape. As she grams at him, Marl hesitantly calls to Taishi, while he struggles to understand why the goblins would be fleeing. Marl warns that something is dangerous and admits she has a terrible feeling, saying it seems far more dangerous than a goblin. Taishi freezes in alarm as it is noted that Marl possesses exceptional danger detection abilities. Marl trembles and asks in fear whether he has noticed something far too dangerous. A sudden impact cuts her words short, and Taishi turns as the interruption slams in without warning. Taishi is left stunned, struggling to understand what just happened. As he stares ahead in shock, Taishi realizes they are facing something horrifying. He grabs Marl and urgently tells her not to look, while she shakily calls to Taishi and he realizes something struck after the goblins passed. It becomes clear that whatever appeared has enough power to overwhelm goblins and even humans in a single blow. Taishi forces himself to stay calm and urges Marl to breathe, realizing this is a true monster that cannot be compared to a goblin. Marl asks what happened to the person ahead, but Taishi can only admit that he does not know. Still shaken, Marl says she believes in Taishi's abilities. As the crashing sounds and screams tear closer through the forest, it becomes clear that there is no time left. Marl trembles and warns that it is worse than a goblin, then hesitantly concludes that, judging by its strength, it must be something far more dangerous. Fear takes over Marl's face as the realization leaves her speechless. The truth lands at last as she identifies the creature as a troll. Taishi stiffens and reminds himself that their request was only supposed to be goblin cleanup. Marl looks toward the fallen victims and shakily admits she was never told it would be like this. Taishi reaches out in panic, calls for attention, and urgently tells Marl to run because it is dangerous. A violent strike crashes down, ripping through the moment with overwhelming force. The troll charges with terrifying speed and power as the others shout warnings not to face it head-on, to attack from the sides or rear, to avoid getting hit, and to dodge carefully. As the monster roars, someone realizes their attacks are not working because its wounds are regenerating, and the situation proves even worse than expected. The group reels from the pain and pressure, with one person groaning that it hurts while Taishi admits This is becoming too much to handle. Marl snaps that if they really call themselves adventurers, they should stop hesitating and leave this to the knights. She turns back in alarm and urgently tells Taishi to stop standing there and run now. Even as Marl tells him to flee, Taishi steadies himself and admits he does not fully understand it, but he wants to defeat the troll and refuses to run. It becomes clear that a troll's regeneration is so strong that shallow wounds heal instantly. Taishi makes his move and unleashes fire. As the flames strike, Taishi realizes that because trolls are weak to fire, their regeneration should no longer recover so quickly. Marl stares in shock and realizes Taishi is using fire magic. Someone seizes the opening and shouts that the troll's body is no longer regenerating, ordering everyone to attack at once. The fighters rush in together from multiple sides and press the assault while the burning troll is thrown into confusion. Taishi raises his weapon through the magic circle, commands the attack to go forward, and calls for the flames to burn even harder. The troll thrashes and roars as the final blows crash into it from all sides. A caped fighter charges in with a battle cry and launches into the air to press the attack. The fighter moves past the troll with a swift finishing slash, using the shield and footing together in a tightly controlled motion. As the impact lands, Taishi stares in shock while others erupt in relief and declare that the troll has been defeated, and one of them wonders if it was truly dead. It is explained that the move is a coordinated technique that uses the shield as a stepping stone, something impossible to perform regularly without defeating many monsters and building real experience. Taishi looks up at the caped warrior and realizes this is what a true knight is like. The knight calmly says that thanks to the group's support, the battle ended with only a few injuries and offers sincere gratitude. Taishi awkwardly rubs his head and replies that the ones who were truly amazing were them. As the two figures walk away into the darkened field, Taishi watches in stunned silence, still trying to process what he has just witnessed.